Oh, really dramatic entrance. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Jana Wrange and I'm a researcher at the Political Science Department at Lund University. But I'm also a guest researcher here at the Estonian Academy of Security Sciences, which is a nice full circle moment for me to come back to my home country. It is a great pleasure to be here today and to get this opportunity to share with you some of the reflections of the development of civil defense in Sweden, a topic that is not only surfaced now in public debate, but has also regained strategic importance in Europe and beyond. My keynote today builds on my PhD dissertation, which examines the re-emergence of Sweden, civil defense in Sweden and in a broader international context. Through this work, I have sought to understand the contemporary civil defense and how it is shaped by historical experiences and political cultures, and also the changing perceptions of threats and resilience. And in my speech then, I aim to highlight how these dimensions influence the conception of civil defense in different national contexts. I will also touch a little bit upon the organizational structure of civil defense in Sweden and what it means there today. And as you might have realized then, Sweden is my main example because it is a country whose civil defense has undergone really significant transitions, reflecting both the national as well as global shifts in security thinking. Let's see. So I will start with a brief history lesson. The concept of civil defense carries a really strong legacy from nuclear age. It originates from the beginning of 20th century when it was mainly aimed at deterring war and later nuclear war through measures like shelters, mass evacuations, public preparedness campaigns, and so on. In Sweden, these efforts were woven into its total defense principle, consisting of both military and civil defense. And within this framework, civil defense had mandatory service as well as with message if war comes, eller om kriget kommer, embedded in both public life and national planning. These efforts are best symbolized by the public information campaigns that you can see here on the slide as well, that started during the Second World War. So the first brochure came out in 1943 and have been updated and continued from there on. Remarkably, Sweden was a neutral country at a time, but its per capita civil defense budget remained higher than that of major powers, including USSR, United States, UK, and France, and that was so well into the 1980s. However, with the end of Cold War, civil defense lost its central place. It gave way to new notions such as civil security, societal security, and crisis management, many of these concepts that we well know and use today as well. That meant that by early 2000s, Sweden had even dissolved the agency responsible for coordinating civil defense and maintaining shelters and stockpiles. So all these disappeared. For many, this kind of marked the death of traditional total defense in Sweden. Fast forward a decade or so, and Russia's aggression against Ukraine and the illegal annexation of Crimea in 2014, that kind of marked the turning point in the European security landscape, one that had already begun deteriorating well before that moment. And as was mentioned before as well, since then, this decline has been accelerated by global and regional crises, the COVID-19 pandemic, rising geopolitical tensions, sabotage in energy and cyber sectors, and ultimately, of course, Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine on February 24th, 2022, that has brought back the real threat of war in our continent. Together, these events have revealed the hybrid and really interconnected nature of contemporary threats, prompting really rapid adjustments across national, regional, and international institutions. And the previous presentation was a great example of what is happening on the EU level. In response, then, many European states and security organizations have adopted comprehensive security strategies, approaches that integrate both civilian and military dimensions, and apply all hazards of perspective and rest on principle of societal engagement in providing security. And this shift is particularly evident in the Baltic Sea region, where a range of national initiatives are unfolding under the banner of total defense, so comprehensive security. And in Sweden, that means then that a government decision from 2015 formally reinstated the total defense doctrine, which is built on two interdependent pillars, military defense and civil defense. In its revival, it was emphasized that civil defense is to be built with broad threat perceptions in mind, and in collaboration with other states and organizations, focusing on both crisis and war. And this is a significant difference from the Cold War civil defense, where it was mainly national concern, and even scholarly works are really limited in actually comparing or even talking about international influence in national civil defense policies. Thus, using the words of a Swedish civil defense historian, Marie Kronqvist, what once was considered by many to be a relic of history, a curiosity or vaguely familiar target of ridicule, civil defense has re-emerged as a vital part of national and regional security. Today, Sweden's civil defense encompasses all civilian capabilities aimed at protecting the population, ensuring the functioning of society, supporting the armed forces, now within NATO framework, and sustaining public resilience and will to defend in times of war or threat of war. And this wording again has changed since the 2015 when we talked a lot about crisis and war. Now the wording is more in the direction of war or the threat of war. The underlying logic here is, of course, that by strengthening these capabilities, which simultaneously also enhance society's ability to prevent and manage peacetime crises, reinforcing resilience across the entire security spectrum. One of the most perhaps noticeable actions when it comes to Sweden reviving civil defense has been the return of this same public information campaign. Every household has once again received this brochure, first in 2018 and in 2024, an updated version that outlines societal functions, individual responsibilities, and measures for preparedness in both crisis or war. And one of the reasons why I posted this here on the slide is also that when we tend to speak about Swedish civil defense and its history, and today often these brochures are kind of used as great examples to show also the threat perceptions and how these have changed, how we have gone from if war comes to if crisis or war comes. Another significant development in this regard is the re-establishment of National Agency for Psychological Defense, which began its operations in January 2023. This agency is tasked with identifying, analyzing, and preventing foreign malign information influence and disinformation directed against Sweden or Swedish interests, while also strengthening public resilience against such influence campaigns. This model of civil defense that Sweden has today mobilizes a very broad range of actors, from government agencies, municipalities and regions, to private industry, NGOs, and crucially, every resident of Sweden. And here, really to note, every resident, not citizen, resident. In organizational terms, Sweden's civil defense has recently been restructured into 12 societal sectors, each led by a responsible agency. Meanwhile, the country is divided into 6 civil defense regions that correspond to the military regions as well, that would enhance coordination, planning, as well as civil-military cooperation. Institutionally, as you know, spoiler alert from the minister's speech, civil defense portfolio has moved back to the Ministry of Defense since 2022. It was resided under the Ministry of Justice, but went back to Ministry of Defense, and within this also was created a ministerial post for Minister of Civil Defense. Just to give you a really brief financial overlook, the government has proposed really unprecedented investments in civil defense. This kind of also reflects on what we talked about, the level of urgency that we feel, thinking that the civil defense was revived in 2015, and it's not on the graph, but there it was pretty close to zero, and then how the funding has grown now. This is in SEK, but if you divide it by 10, you get by roughly the euros as well. Together, these developments demonstrate that civil defense has undeniably returned in Sweden, but not in really in the same format as it was before. It reflects new threats, new actors, and a more comprehensive understanding of what it means to safeguard society today. Indeed, we now operate in really deeply interconnected security landscape where threats are hybrid, they are transnational and multi-faced, crossing across borders and sectors alike. And global interdependencies and institutional cooperation with memberships in EU and now even NATO, for example, states are tied together in ways that security becomes a shared responsibility. Yes, as a result then, civil defense today extends well beyond national borders or traditional military concerns. It demands collective awareness and international collaboration that to build really truly resilient societies. And research shows, however, that there are really significant variations in how civil defense is understood and applied across countries and institutions. This conceptual variance can hinder implementation, complicate coordination, and weaken our ability to respond jointly to shared challenges. To address this, we must deepen our understanding of civil defense in different contexts, but also within different institutional contexts. And thank you to Hans Das for explaining what he is doing in this regard. And this is why also forums like today are really crucial. They allow us to discuss, refine and align our understandings of civil defense and to develop hopefully a common language on which we can build cooperation on. By doing so, we strengthen not just our individual systems, but also the collective resilience and security of Europe as a whole. And thank you for listening, and I hope we can continue this discussion in the panel later.
I have only one simple twofold question to ask for you. As your presentation was also in the national perspective, then what could Sweden, as it's all learning and then sharing, what could others learn from Sweden? What could Sweden teach others in this important domain? And vice versa, what could Sweden learn from some other countries?
Well,
if anything.
Yeah, well, I think the great examples are the brochures, because when 2018 the one came out, it didn't really gain that much attraction in other countries, but today we have seen how other countries have adopted to informing their population in the same way as Sweden does. The same goes for Psychological Defense Agency. France has one, Sweden has one, and other countries are really considering having one. So these and as well. And I would also say the organizational side of it, because although a lot of it is being restructured, there is this historical background to what to build these developments on. What Sweden can learn from others, I think there is, in the area of cyber, certainly there is a need for enhanced cooperation, and why also Baltic Sea region is really essential, and Estonia as a great partner. And there are, of course, other areas, for example, when it comes to public-private cooperation and stockpiling, because, like I said, Sweden got rid of all the stockpiling, and now we need to really build up that preparedness again.
Thank you very much for this open assessment.
Yeah.
Thanks again.
Thank you.